Mackenzie,
Lemar.
there is a big high school party going down tonight. Not for us at our current ages. Let's pretend that we're back. I'm not inviting you to the high school party. But let's pretend that we're 17 years old, senior year of high school. Which high school stereotype are you?
This is hard because as per usual, I can't pick one
Put yourself in a
because
box, Mackenzie. Put
I
yourself in a box.
can't be put in a box because I was friends with all kinds of different. Like if you picked a random day, I was a goth kid. Another day, I was a theater kid. Another day, I was a choir kid, dance kid, nerd. Like it just pick it. And I would like leaned fully into all of them. Like I would
Okay.
goth up one day and I loved it. I still love it. Like black's my favorite color, 100%. Other days I would be like dressed like I'm going to a business meeting. Do y'all remember that in the aughts where we were like, you know what? We need to look ready to go do business after high school. But I was definitely like the group I was most obsessed with personally and spent the most time with was definitely theater. I was definitely a big theater kid. So that's probably the main one if you really had to pick one. But my personal look and vibe was all over the place.
You kind of, when you say that you could fit into so many different categories and you were sort of a chameleon, I feel like in Inside Out, when they made the second one and introduced all the new ones, if they made a sequel to Can't Hardly Wait, you would be like the chameleon stereotype because they fit in with everybody. I feel like that's the
That's kind
direction
of,
they
yep.
go.
That feels right.
Yeah.
Yep. They need to make that character because that would be the one. That would be me. I think I'm still a lot like that. Like I can talk to anybody. I can relate to anybody. I can be kind of a chameleon because I just think there's always ways to relate to people most of the
Just
time.
don't lean too heavily into it because then you veer into the sociopath.
Yeah,
trope.
then you're a
Like, then you're a
sociopath. Yeah. There's definitely a healthy balance for
Yeah.
sure. I totally agree. What about you? What was your group?
I'm gonna be objective here and see it from the lens of the folks I went to school with, and I would imagine that they would describe me as like the quiet kid, honestly, which is surprising. I was not super social in high school. I was also very religious, which I think contributed to that, so again, kind of surprising. But yeah, I feel like I might have dressed a little more on like not the punk rock side, but I was definitely wearing corduroys and super skate pants, like in all those brands, but I didn't skate. But I was listening to Christian punk and ska, so it was this weird thing where I could be like seen visually.
Did you listen to like Toby Maguire ever? That was my Christian. But
Toby Mac, yeah,
Toby Mac, yeah. It was my.
He was in DC Talk, which is like one of the greatest
DC
Christian bands
Talk, and then what was the other one? The Katana Boys or something like
that.
The Newsboys. No, there was another one. I'll have to look it up later. But there was, yeah, I was heavy. This is, I don't know, it's maybe the Catholic moms, but like I was heavy into the Christian music scene for a hot minute there.
Okay.
So
I was big on the ska, like Five Iron Frenzy, the Supertones.
Yeah.
I was a pretty big ska kid. So
yeah.
I think if you were to ask objectively the folks that remember me from high school, they were probably like, oh, he's quiet. And also I was really into gym. I tried so hard at gym. I got an award senior year of high school for being like the best. I know. And I was smart too. That's the thing. My GPA, I was like number 25 in our class out of like 400 people. And they said, we're giving you an academic award end of senior year. And each department got up and there was a reading, like somebody recognized for English department, somebody for math. And they kept saying all of them. I'm like, which one am I getting? And they went, Lemar Ortiz, you're the best gym kid. Congratulations, because you try so hard at everything, I guess.
How the fuck do you get to be the best gym kid?
Just be overly competitive and think that getting an A in every subject matters, I suppose.
Of all the things that you just said, that's the only thing that checks out for me. Like the overly competitive kid,
Yes.
but like the quiet kid does not work. For context, folks, we just finished celebrating Lamar's 40th birthday last weekend. And if you went to that party or even saw photos of that party, you would not be like, Lemar is the quiet kid who is like, just chill and dresses a little edgy.
Cosplaying as Sailor Moon.
This is not what you would think from that at all. And I would expect to be invited to this party by you for sure. 100% would have assumed that. So that's wild.
Yeah, well, I'm glad we got into that because there are so many friggin' stereotypes in this movie today, and I can't wait to dig into every last one of them.
All right, well, let's do it. Welcome back to We Drink and We Watch Things. I'm Mackenzie.
I'm Lemar.
And we are continuing back to school month this week, again by decade. And this is our 90s entry. 90s teen movies, man, they were such a thing for a hot minute. And there were a lot of them. But we're going to do Can't Hardly Wait.
1998.
1998. Interesting movie with a lot of stereotypes, like we said last week, and we'll say that a lot again this week as well. But before we get into that and these particular teen iterations, what are we drinking today?
So you don't know this, but we're actually drinking two different drinks. Well, I'm drinking a spin-off of the drink that you're drinking. So as always, Skylar from @craftworld with no vowels is the one who designed this drink for us. Make sure you give him a follow to get our cool recipes if you're not getting them already here. And this first one is called a teeny, because I guess you said there are girls in this film that are drinking martinis at a high school party.
I will say the name and the concept was inspired by me because one of my biggest takeaways on this watch were these teenage girls drinking straight up vodka martinis with an olive. And I was like, there's literally no way. Like, this is not teenage girl drinking. So we riffed on it and wanted it to be a teeny. What would a teen martini actually be? Yeah, for sure.
Definitely sweetened it a bit. So we have 2 ounces of vodka, a half ounce of Cointreau, 0.75 ounces of lime, and 0.25 ounces of grenadine or cranberry juice if you don't have that fresh on hand.
Yeah. So how did you riff on it?
So I riffed on it because at the last minute, I was thinking of this movie and what would kind of make sense for a cocktail. And there's so much focus on this goddamn strawberry Pop-Tart throughout this movie that I wanted to do a spin on that. So what I did, I took the exact same recipe I just said, but I also added 0.25 ounces of palm juice and 0.25 ounces of strawberry puree. And I'm going to call this the strawberry Pop-Tart. Get it? You guys, you can't see it, but Mackenzie is cracking up so hard right now. She loves it.
Do you see his face of pride, just utter pride? Who's so excited by it?
It was a chaos theory. I wasn't sure how it was going to turn out, but then when I took a sip, it actually does go down scarily close to a strawberry Pop-Tart.
Okay, I was going to say, well, let's compare colors here.
Yeah, mine's definitely dark. It's got the puree in there.
Yours is definitely darker. Yeah. Okay, well, cheers.
Cheers.
Mine has a rose petal ice cube, though, so I'm just saying.
That does sound very high schoolery. Like, guys, I got the rose petal ice cubes.
Listen, I have to get into the zone. You know, we got to get into the zone to get through this movie, at least for me. Okay, so let's blow through some basics and talk cast and crew and all the things. I think we're going to try to do this faster. We say this every time, and
we should just stop breaking promises at this point. There's no trust between us and our listeners left.
What if we just list them? What if we just list them this time? I feel like that's the only way to get through it. You know?
I disagree. There's things I want to touch on. We don't have to go into like their whole category, like their whole
totally fine. I'm just trying to tighten it up for you guys, the listeners. But if you enjoy our little sidebars about every single person in the cast that take 20 minutes, then bear with us because that's what's about to go down. All right, so Can't Hardly Wait, 1998. That rhymes. The IMDb is 6.5 out of 10. And the critics were not fans of this one on Rotten Tomatoes. That is a 42% on Rotten Tomatoes and 63% for audiences. So fresh-ish, right on the line, I would say, of fresh.
I would imagine this is another one like Breakfast Club. And I know Breakfast Club skews higher because I think it's just considered to be a better film. But this one, I think, is truly, if you were not in high school in the late 90s or early aughts, it probably, a lot of the stereotypes don't hit home. But I think if you were, then you're probably in that 63% who are like, yep, I get it.
Yeah. I think that it's not as fun a watch for me personally. I think maybe because I think I saw this a little bit out of order. I think I saw some other teen movies before this. Okay. So by the time I saw this, I was I saw it in the late 90s and early 2000s, whatever, but I think I had seen several by this point and I was a little bit over it, or I felt like the other ones did it better. We'll get into it.
That's actually really interesting because at the end of your official cast list, I wanted to list all the actors, not all of them, but everybody that I recognize, because this is such I wouldn't call it star-studded. It's not A-list cast, but I'm like, oh, I know this person from this thing. And it's not a coincidence because apparently, to what you just said, teen movies, if you think about it, we talked about John Hughes last week and how he had this teen movie boom in the 80s, and then he sort of stopped and was making, then we switched to kids movies for the 90s. Not just John Hughes, but name an incredible movie from the like 1990 to 95, aside from Clueless, I think might be the only standout, but there's not a ton else going on for people making movies about high schoolers. And then Scream happens in 1996. Granted, it's a horror movie, but that starts this entire boom period where everyone's making teen movies. And I guess when you talk to the two directors of this, that's the reason why they had their pick of all these actors and actresses, because they had tried to get it greenlit for, I guess, multiple years. Then Scream happens in 96, and in 97 they're able to cast basically whoever they want. They have this whole field of actors. They take the cream of the crop, and then in subsequent years, to your point, all these other teen films get made. We see all these faces, so it's not a coincidence that so many of these folks went on to be stars in their own right.
Yeah, I kind of wonder what the it's different when you I mean we saw a lot of them, all of them almost arguably, but it's interesting to think about the order of them because
Yeah.
I don't remember the exact order. I just remember seeing a lot of these.
Yeah.
And yeah, I do think that basically impacted my viewing experience in this particular one. But all that to say, I think there's a lot of actually really fun teen movies. We just watched one at your party. We made Lamar watch She's All
She's
That
all
for the
that.
first time. And that, I have to say, it was one of my favorite movie watching experiences with a friend seeing a movie for the first time, but especially like with you. We've watched a couple movies together. It was super fun to like comment through that.
We
And
should have done that as a live
we
recording like we
should
did
have. If
Jaws.
I had known it was going to be so good, like it really was. We had a couple of your other friends there as well. And like everybody's commentary was just, it was gold. It was a good
Yeah.
time. But that's the feeling that these movies give me on the whole. So anyway, hopefully you guys will have a good time as we go through this as well. Um, Directors, Harry Elfont and Deborah Kaplan, also the writers. And apparently they flipped the credits on that. I guess somebody wrote a little bit more than the other, is what I heard from that. But they are kind of a duo who's done a few together. It seems like they did. I don't know if you remember this one. This was definitely one of the ones that I watched. Josie and the Pussycats.
Another Rachel Lee Cook vehicle.
Yeah, and you know what? I was like obsessed with that movie. I definitely
I
thought
don't
it
think I
was
ever
like a
saw
good
it, but I
time.
think like 6 of the cast members of this film are in that film as well, or something like that.
It's so yes, and it has like Tara Reid and some of these
Mhm.
others that Rosario Dawson, who was like big at the time as well. And I, when I think back on it, I haven't seen it in a hot minute, but it is like so frenetic, and
Mm.
it's a very intense, silly energy, but it has such that like 90s teen movie aesthetic of just too much, so many patterns, lights, colors, things, like just a lot fucking
Mm.
happening. Anyway, I always thought it was such a good time. I thought it was super funny. But they did that one together, and then they've done a number of other things, but they've done a few of these kind of like that together. But they did like he did like a very Brady sequel. He also did like some other rom-com type of things like Maid of Honor and Leap Year and things like that. But they've done a few together as well. Did you have any from them that you wanted that,
No,
stood
I
out
was
to you?
surprised how little I had seen, because I do enjoy not just this as like a fun film, but the script itself, for it being, we mentioned this last week, how this is kind of, this and Breakfast Club are a bunch of scenes that don't have a necessarily a direct sequence of the order that they need to take place. It's just, here's a party, there's 8 different stories going on, let's cut back and forth.
Mhm.
And I thought the script was pretty tight for what it was, so I was surprised how few of their films I'd actually seen.
I think I've seen more of the newer ones actually than the older ones, and but a lot of them not so much. But Josie and the Pussycats is like of the era ish. That's a
Yeah.
2001 film, and that one I had seen. So yeah, it's an interesting mix of films that they've got under their belt. Um,
I got some good
I-
news for you though, because you're gonna jump into cast. And
yeah,
guess what? We can skip Jennifer Love Hewitt because we covered her in depth on our I Know What You Did Last Summer episode. So if you want more JLH, go listen to that.
I was going to say bless you because we have talked a lot about her recently. So yes, obviously Jennifer Love Hewitt is one of the main characters here. Interestingly, she's top billed for probably obvious reasons, but
She has
um
like 8 lines of dialogue.
she's not, yeah, actually in it that much. So that's very interesting to me.
Oh,
The
well,
other
you should say her character's name though. Amanda. That's the
Amanda.
official
Oh my
character name.
god.
Yes.
I love that he like waited for a reaction for that. And you're like,
I mean, it's a
no.
pretty good zinger. I
Oh
would have
wow.
laughed. I would have been the one guy laughing.
Yeah, with your Jim Award. All right. Ethan Embry. Um Ethan Embry is the other big one in here. He's the one who's obsessed with Amanda. He's
Mhm.
Preston. Which I thought was an interesting name for the time. Like, was that a
It
common name?
was,
I
yeah,
don't
was
know.
that meant to be? I had that exact thought, but I didn't write it down. But something of, why is this high schooler in the 90s named Preston? Is that like he's adorable, but also kind of
I don't
smart?
know.
I don't know.
I don't know, but I have a friend named Preston who's like kind of that age, but not really. But he's literally the only one that I know. So I don't think it's a common name at that time. It's really interesting. But
I also felt really bad for him because I wrote down when I first saw him in this is we always, I mean, we don't always talk about, people in general talk about how in these high school films, it's never actual high schoolers playing them. It's people in their late
mhm.
20s. And I wrote down, does Ethan Embry have the worst hairline of anyone portraying a high schooler ever? And then I felt really bad because he was only like 19 when they were filming this. So he just
Yeah.
had those
I
genes.
think that's just his hairline. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not great. We're not here to be mean on the pod, but it is noticeable. It is
Yeah.
noticeable. And I think the other thing about him that's funny is like he is a stoner kid. He was a stoner kid
Yep.
filming this. It's pretty legendary. And I just think that totally comes through in his performance. I think it's also comes through in some of his other performances off not in this movie. He just has that like look about him and he's got that weird energy and
He
it's
must have
just
had that
funny.
Visine on set though, because you don't see it in his eyes ever. They're never bloodshot. And when I read that he was, yeah, super stoned throughout the filming to the point that, spoiler, Jennifer Love Hewitt gave him a pack of mints before their makeout scene because she
Yeah.
knew he was just smoking day in and day out. And then when you look at him on camera, he doesn't look super high, even though he played a stoner in Empire Records. But I was
Yeah.
actually impressed with how he carried himself through this film. I don't know.
Yeah, I like him most in That Thing You Do, for the
Hell
record.
yes, that is
Yeah.
a top 10 movie. Like, for rewatchability's sake, top 10 feel good movie for
I
me.
could watch that movie 1,000,000 times and not be unhappy with it. It is a great time, and it does a really good job of, playing the bass player in that one. That's a good one. But he's been in a ton of movies kind of around that
Yeah.
time, like you said, Empire Records. He did a bunch of TV as well. He was in Murder, She Wrote, things like that. But he was also in Vegas Vacation.
Yep.
He was in some later, kind of like B movies as well.
Did
But
you
then
see Cheap Thrills?
I did not. I don't think so.
So he
Well,
was in
maybe
that
back
about, I
then, but
want
I
to
don't
say
think
it was
so.
maybe 8 or 9 years ago. Obviously aged up a bit, but it had him and David Koechner, who played Todd Packer on The Office, and he's an anchorman and things like that.
Mm,
But it's a very simple plot line of a rich guy meets these two old high school friends that run into each other at a bar, and he's paying them to do escalating dares. It feels like a very predictable plot, but honestly, I really, really enjoyed it.
really?
A little bit of what's the word I'm looking for? I know Janelle was not loving the first 30 minutes because it was very much machismo and like kind of not great with women because
Mm,
he's daring them to do things, and it's like, oh, go across the bar and smack this girl on
mm.
the ass and get her to throw
Oh,
a drink in your face.
great.
So
Great.
it starts out a little like rough, but then as the movie goes on, it gets better. I really think it's worth a watch. Highly recommend Cheap Thrills for kind of a thriller type of film.
Okay, well, let's see if I can get through those first 30 sexist minutes.
Yeah, it's rough.
But I will say that they this is probably a funny reference, but I really like him, and one of the more recent things I know him from is actually pretty old now, but that I remember him from is Sweet Home Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
And he plays the like closeted gay guy in Alabama, and he's just so cute in that. I think he does a great job, and he gives her some zingers in that one. I will say he's
Is
pretty
that the one
funny.
with Reese Witherspoon or Reese without her spoon?
With her spoon. With her
Good for her.
spoon. Yeah, yeah,
She
yeah.
hadn't lost it yet.
Definitely didn't lose it at that time. No, but he's done a bunch of stuff. I will say, check him out. He's an pretty ubiquitous actor, actually, when all things considered. We also have Charlie Corsmo, who plays William Lichter, and
Really?
he's the nerd guy, which is funny. Fun fact: he was at MIT at this time,
And
so
basically retired.
yeah.
He was like a last minute recast. So he did Hook, and then he came out of retirement because they originally had cast a guy named Adam Han Bird, who, if you've ever seen The Ice Storm with Elijah Wood, and I think Christina Ricci might be in that. But
Who
that was,
hasn't seen that?
who hasn't seen The Ice Storm? Yeah, there's a key
Me.
swapping party. It's great. Anyway, but he plays a kid in that, and then he also played Robin Williams as a kid in Jumanji. So that's where I recognized him from. So he was supposed to be William Lichter in this, but filmed a few scenes. They weren't feeling it, sent him packing. He actually appears, the back of him appears in the scene where they're carrying the ladder to the pool house near the beginning of the film. So he's in the movie, Adam Hand Burned, but they replaced Charlie Corsmo, who did this film and then promptly went right back into retirement for like another 20 years until he appeared in something in 2018. So
Yeah, I feel like he just does this for funsies once in a while. It's definitely my read of like,
he's at MIT. He's doing okay for himself.
I think he's doing fine. Yeah, obviously super duper smart. So good on you, I guess. But yeah, I think he's great. We also have a few other characters here that we have to mention. One of my what I think is one of the more fun duos in this is Lauren Ambrose. She plays Denise, and she was in 6 Feet Under, which I actually never saw, but I have heard nothing but great things about. But she was in that for a long time.
One of my favorite series finales of all time.
Really? Yeah, okay. Well, yeah, it's been on the list, but it's, once it's been long enough for a while, it's like, it feels hard to go back to. Anyway, sidebar. She also was apparently in Where the Wild Things Are, the newer remake that happened. That same thing I heard was pretty well done. Yeah, one of the voices. And Yellow Jackets is a recent one that she was in. So she's worked decently steadily at the time, but it's so funny. There's so many kind of usual suspects of the teen movies in this who don't really have a lot of lines necessarily, but you recognize them. They're like the staple teen kids. And she was that for a hot minute as well. But this is probably, I think, her biggest one around that time that she was most featured in, I should say.
A lot of these folks went on to be on 6 Feet Under. It's weird. Like we said, there was a boom after this, not just of teen movies, but TV series where a lot of this cast went on. And if you look at the crossover, I think 6 of these people went on to be on 6 Feet Under. 8 of them were on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Like 12 of them were, there's so much cross. It's like a very incestuous cast in a good way.
Yeah,
not a Game of Thrones way.
I think it was like a machine at that time. You know what I mean? Like all the same people were working on stuff, that was teen themed. So you just had kind of the usual suspects, which I think works out. I mean, it helps to recognize them, if that makes sense. Of like, if you're trying to feel like these people from school, like I recognize those people. You've seen them in a bunch of movies. It gives you a similar vibe, a similar energy. So anyway, the other half of that little duo that I love is Seth Green, who I just think I have such a soft spot for him. Shout out to my sister who was obsessed with Seth Green and like loved everything he did. And I have adopted this love as well. He's done a bunch of things I'm sure everybody knows, but one of my favorite roles of his is actually in The Italian Job, the remake of The Italian Job in 2003. Where he's Lyle or the Napster. And he like will only go by the Napster
because he invented Napster.
Because he invented Napster and Sean Parker stole it from him. It's a whole thing. It's so funny. I love it so much. But yeah, he's great in that. He's super fun. But he was in a bunch of these kind of teen movies as well. But he was also,
you could also make an argument for him being the most successful cast member coming out of it. I think Jennifer Love Hewitt and him are probably long-term wise the most successful. But I'm sure you were going to mention Family Guy, Robot Chicken. He's just been a staple of animation Simpsons. For 2 decades now.
Yeah, because he has a fun voice. He has a great voice for this stuff, and he does a lot of voice work, but those are probably, definitely his most successful ones. And like I said, it totally works. He did a lot of other animation. He does a lot of like nerdy animation that wasn't as successful, but is still really fun, still really cool. He was in Shazam, a couple of things like that.
Shazam, the new one?
I think so.
Okay, I didn't see it. I didn't know he was in that. I remember. I also wanted to mention because I'm sure people.
He is a friend, uncredited.
Okay. On the TV show Friends.
On Shazam.
Okay, sure. So it would be funny if anybody that had a cameo on Friends but didn't. It's like I'm uncredited.
I was gonna say I think he might have had a cameo on Friends though. To be fair, because I think everyone fucking did in the night. Yeah, 100%.
I was gonna mention Austin Powers because I feel like that trilogy.
Yeah, I was gonna say yes.
Films, and then he's in a really not great but guilty pleasure movie, which I think I've mentioned on the pod before, called Knockaround Guys, which is a attempt at bringing back the mafia genre in the early 2000s. And you get Vin Diesel, Barry Pepper, Seth Green. You get John Malkovich doing a terrible Italian accent. So
John
it's
Malkovich
Dennis
cannot do
Hopper.
accents. Like, can we
No,
just move
no.
on from trying to make him do accents? It's
That
terrible.
Rounders, he's not good with the accents, but yeah, Knock Around Guys, guilty pleasure. But if you like mobster movies, you can do worse than Knock Around Guys.
Good to know. Good to
Mm.
know. All right. Well, he's a good one. I think also one worth mentioning, mostly because I think it's funny what he does later, which is Peter Facinelli,
Mm-hmm.
who is, he's Mike Dexter. He breaks up with Amanda, sets this whole plot in motion, blah, blah, blah. But he was in, for me, I most recognize him immediately from Twilight.
So you
Like,
know what he is? Say it
yeah.
out loud.
Say it out loud. He's a sparkly vampire. Don't forget the sparkle. He sparkles.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he always stands out to me as being in that movie because he was in a bunch of kind of like, I don't know, B movie stuff, even B TV show stuff after this.
Mm-hmm.
But that's like his, I don't know, comeback ish. And I just remember him, I don't know, giving me not dad vibes is what I will say in that movie. I was like,
Daddy, not dad.
I was
Is
like,
that where
yeah,
you're going with this?
exactly. I was
Okay.
like, this is not, if we're supposed to not find him attractive, it's a problem. All right, moving on.
So can I list? Did you have anybody else in the main cast? Because I just wanted to drop a list of
I was
all the
going to
familiar
just
faces.
list. Go for it. Exactly.
All
Go
right,
for it.
let's go. Freddie Rodriguez, Sean Patrick Thomas, Donald Faison, Melissa Joan Hart, Breckin Meyer, Clea Duvall, Jason Segel, Jamie Presley, Selma Blair, Eric Balfour, Jerry O'Connell. Just everybody in this movie, even if they have one or less lines of dialogue, kills their scenes and
Yep.
went on to do incredible things.
Yeah. You recognize them, like you recognize them from other things. I love that it was Jason Segel's first movie. I love also that he is credit. I love the names and the credits too. Like all their determinations are like he's watermelon guy, which to be fair, he's licking the inside of a watermelon.
What
Like
else
what
would he
else
be
are you
called?
gonna
Yeah.
what are you gonna call him? Exactly. But it's and Selma Blair's in it as well. Like and she's girl Mike's hits on number one. Like just what a name for these characters across this whole list. It's wild. All right, homies. Well, we covered the cast. Like we said, you're going to see these folks in about 1,200 other teen movies, including but not limited to She's All That, 10 Things I Hate About You, Dazed and Confused, Jawbreakers, not another teen movie, actually.
Yep.
Never Been Kissed, all the The Craft, The Virgin Suicides, Clueless, Empire Records. I could go on. The point is there's 1,200 of this movie.
Yeah.
And I like most if not all of them actually, so whatever. It was a genre that hit for me for sure. So
It's kind of the inverse of when we talked about Breakfast Club last week, because despite Breakfast Club being rated R, we mentioned how at that time it was sort of taking what the high school genre was there with like parties, beers, boobs, all that stuff. And like, no, let's just put 5 characters, 5 stereotypes in a room and have them talk for an hour and a half. Like that was what made it special. And granted, depending on the order you saw this is also kind of special because again, not a lot of teen movies were being made at the time. And this is 1 year before American Pie comes out, which takes the entire teen genre and, makes it super raunchy and makes it rated R. And that we get back to sort of that Porky's vibe, right? But this one, the year before, PG-13, we'll get into the things they had to omit to keep it PG-13. But again, props to them for trying something new and trying to reinvigorate a genre that had been dead for close to a decade.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think they did. Like I said, I think I probably just saw some of these out of order, but this was one of the many iterations, and I felt like they just kind of kept doing it and kept capitalizing on it.
Yeah.
I think the way this watches for me is a little bit not another teen movie like, and that's maybe why, I don't love it, but I recognize parts of it that are fun as well. So quick summary, and then we'll dig in. A complete graduating class consisting of beautiful girls, geeks, and promising footballers assemble at a rich classmate's residence for a party. Interesting developments follow at the get-together.
Well, there you go.
Simple.
Interesting developments do follow, depending on your definition of interesting. But yeah.
Interesting-ish, controversial, crazy, wild, whatever.
To that point of like the plot of this film focuses so much on the party. I think this was a 26-day shoot, and most of it was at night because it was set, at an actual home,
party.
like not on a sound stage. So they had to film at night. And that was just, it was apparently kind of a grueling shoot because they were
Yeah.
shooting it at, after 9 o'clock every night until 3, 4 in the morning, to the point that they started pranking each other. Extras were taking naps on the set, and they would wrap them up in cellophane and all this stuff and tell them, hey, you got to film now. Just, it feels like it was a very fun set, but also probably a pretty difficult shoot.
Yeah, difficult shoot, a little bit tiring. I remember a nugget about Melissa Joan Hart, who is in Sabrina the Teenage Witch at this time, but hasn't done her own teen movies yet. Also, she goes on to do Drive Me Crazy, which follows a lot of this formula.
Yeah.
But she was doing B12 shots to like stay energized for these night shoots.
Makes sense with her role too.
Sure does, doesn't it? But what stands out to me is I was like, this is what got her the Drive Me Crazy job, because if you've ever seen that one, her character in that movie is like very school spirit, and she's popular, but she's school spirit, and she's super high energy as well. So I'm like, did she do B12 shots on both?
I was a little confused why she never explained it all in this. I think this was her first film role, and I just knew her from Clarissa, and I'm like, why is she not pausing to explain everything to everyone? She knows it all. I don't get it. But...
She knows it all. She should tell us what's happening. Right. That's her whole job. Like, what the fuck? Yeah. No, I think it's an interesting mix. It landed, though, again, to your point, it kind of kicked off this genre. It was a 10 million-ish budget. There's a wide range there by a couple mil, but it was a 10 million-ish budget, and it made 26 million in theaters, which I think at this time too was, especially for this kind of movie, not a big theater type of movie. You would definitely wait to rent a video for a lot of this kind of stuff.
I saw this on DVD. I did not see this.
Yeah, I definitely saw this on VHS. Perhaps because I'm 1,000. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know, but I do know we definitely rented it. We did not see it in theaters. So that's a pretty healthy budget for a time where that was pretty common. But my first note of this is, and I haven't seen this like probably since I was, early college, teens, whatever. But I was like, oh my God, this opening is so 90s high school teen movie. LOL, even the title cards. Like, this is the fucking formula, the font, the colors, the bright colors, like think 10 Things I Hate About You, think Drive Me Crazy, think Clueless, all these, like, it just has the exact same vibe. And it's playing Eve 6 in the background. I was like, oh my God.
The soundtrack to this. Oh my goodness.
Good.
I had written down, I didn't want to jump into this right away, but soundtrack, you get like 3 Smash Mouth songs, one of which plays for some reason 4 different times during the film, but sure, why not?
Because that's what happens at these kind of parties though. Like the playlist totally loops. That's why I have that note of like, of course this is on again. Like it would totally be on again.
Was this before Napster and everything, right? So you were still using CDs, so it would make sense that the CD's on a loop, yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I think this is CD world. This is CD binder world. You know what I mean? Like somebody's got to go grab the big fucking binder and switch it out. So yeah, it's definitely, but you put that disc on CD replay, like because you might not get to it in time.
Grow like 3 sizes, like the Grinch by.
I still have my CD binder.
Same like, dude. All right, we need to swap at some point. But Jewel, Run DMC, Third Eye Blind, Blink 182, Missy Elliott, and that's just like the official soundtrack. There's also a whole nother 20 songs that just play in the background of the party, and it feels like a late 90s teen party. Like it's a killer soundtrack.
It is so good. It's a fun time. Like you almost want to like just pause for the songs a little bit, which is what the soundtrack is for. I'm aware, but I just like during the movie, I'm like, oh, I love this song. Oh, I love this song. Well, if it isn't obvious already, guys, this is a little bit older movie. We're going to go straight into spoiler territory. We're not going to do a spoiler-free rating. So now's the time. Turn around. Don't drown. It's spoiler time.
Hell yeah.
So we're leading into this like last party of the school year, going into summer, and you have this like graduation day has literally happened today. It's that morning. You get all these comments throughout that ceremony that kind of kick off the plot, which is, Mike Dexter has broken up with Amanda, and oh my God, what scandal. And then
I don't want to like cut you off, but I don't want to have to keep doing this. Her name is Amanda. I'm just kidding. That's the last time I will do that. I had to say it.
I was going to say, do you want to keep doing the pod together, or what are we talking about?
The fourth try, the episode would just cut off, and that would be the last ever released episode of We Drink and We Watch.
I'm just going to mute him. Is what's going to happen. No, I'm just kidding. No, I think that it was a pretty funny moment, which we will get to. But anyways, Yes, he has dumped her. It's a whole fucking thing. Everybody's really preoccupied with that, which I don't remember this about high school. I really don't remember being preoccupied with other people's
The most
relationships,
popular
truly.
people on
Yeah.
campus breaking up, no one really cares.
I think I also like our school. We definitely had, I don't know, quote unquote cool kids, but we did not have that like cheerleader footballer vibe of
Mm.
this is the couple or these are the couples. There were cool people in different groups. That is one thing I think I liked about my high school was like there were a lot of cool people across a lot of groups. Maybe this is just my perception, I don't know, but we just had cool people. We didn't have any one person and we weren't that preoccupied with what was going on with them. I don't know. That was
Yeah,
just
I
not that
get
interesting
the
to me.
friends of them. I get the
Yeah.
his three
Yeah, they're
best friends
bros
and
in
their
her house.
girlfriends
No.
being involved in that. But the fact that the bros in the house, the fact that everyone is so in, and I also get, which is a bummer, but you hear from females all the time of freshly single and out of the woodwork come all these dudes who suddenly have feelings for you or like want to quote unquote talk. So I get
Or
that
if you're
part.
lucky, they do it while you're still in a relationship. Those are the best
I
ones.
apologize to you like 6 times for that, and you need to stop bringing it up on the podcast. Anyway, that's a joke.
This is a joke, folks. Don't freak out. Nobody
Yes.
freak out. But it is a thing. Guys do this. They absolutely do this where they like, as soon as you're free, they move in. And
Mm,
that's my one complaint about Preston. Like, I get that he feels optimistic, but this is not the time, bro. Like, she was in a relationship with this guy for 4 years, apparently doesn't even fucking know who you are. And this, again, is like you said, they're coming out of the woodwork. There's a bunch of these people like this. And he feels like they had this deep connection. And listen, I'm not saying that's not important at all. But again, the timing is really bad. I think for him, it feels like a Hail Mary. It's the end of the year. It's,
yeah.
this is the only shot he's going to get. But yeah, it's just not the time.
People blame pornography or like early aughts emo music for the new simp trend, like the sad boy stalking a girl, unrequited love, feeling sorry for themselves. If you're identifying with this, not sorry, but like people blame all that. You might be able to blame Can't Hardly Wait because it's this. I wrote down Denise is right. She tells Preston at the beginning, you're harping on this one memory you had from 4 years ago of this connection that you think you shared. And at this time in 1999, there's like 5 types of Pop Tarts. So the odds that a girl's going to pull out the same, it's not that great of a
I
connection,
know. I
honestly.
love that he references that as like pulling out the same breakfast pastry that I'm enjoying. I'm like, yeah,
What
her
are
and
the odds?
27 other
Yeah.
people. Like, what are you talking about?
But yeah, so I felt like this kind of set this tone of, oh, I have feelings for a girl and we have things in common, but I've never spoken to her and I've never communicated. We have no bond whatsoever, but if I throw it out in front of her, she's going to love me. And yeah, I liked this movie in 1999, but watching it again, I'm just like, this isn't the best. I wanted the ending when he finally confesses and he's walking down the stairs and says, this time in freshman year when you had the same Pop-Tart and I've been thinking about this, and she's all stressed out from all the guys coming out and catcalling her and all
Yeah.
this shit. And she just goes, you know what, asshole? Why don't you get a goddamn life? I want to just be
Yeah.
like, credits, movie's over. That's
Credits
it.
all done. Love it. Peace. We're out. Yeah. And listen, she's kind of a dick in that moment. But to your point, she has just been basically verbally assaulted by every man at this party. She's fucking done.
Yeah.
And it totally makes sense that she's done. And I agree with you. I don't like that the moral of this story is that the impish obsessed guy wins,
Yeah.
because it is kind of like that. I do think there is something to be said, of course, for people who have genuine feelings for somebody and take a long time to get those out and whatever. Like, that's fine. But yeah, they haven't had a conversation. He's built up a Pop Tart, and the fact that he saw her first. It's like, what? I've got dibs? Like, what the fuck is that logic? It was
Right.
very, very weird. And he's sweet. He's shown to be sweet and not super problematic, which is maybe the only reason this works.
You forgive him a little bit because he doesn't have the same intention that these other guys.
Right. Her second fucking cousin, whatever. Like, he's not one of those, but he's also, again, building up something in his mind. And I like that she calls that out. It's so harsh and it feels a little oof in the moment. But yeah, I agree with you. I like that she kind of calls that out. But
we were talking about the different guys that come out of the woodwork, and I have to give, this is a weird thing to say, but I do have to give props to the clearly stoned dude who just says, God, you're such a hottie. Can I see you naked? Like, at least he's upfront about it. I know it's a big time no, but
At least he's real about it. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. I mean, I don't know. I mean, to each her own, but I will say, like, I'd rather a guy come up to me in a bar and be very clear about what he's looking for in that
Yeah.
conversation than pretend to be interested in me for 2 hours. Like, you maybe have a better shot with the former rather than the latter. You know what I mean? Like, so I respect it. I respect it. It's not going to always work, but I respect it.
Yeah.
Have a
I
good
know
time.
in a couple weeks we're going to be covering Booksmart, and I think that does this
Oh,
same
I love
essential
Booksmart.
storyline a little better than
Mm-hmm.
what this does, because there is some unrequited love in there, but I like the way that that plays out a little more cleanly, because I feel like the end of it, I don't want to jump to the end. I didn't need them to kiss. I feel like they could have just said, "Hey, let's go have a coffee and like talk about potential," as opposed to he got the girl. I didn't think
Yeah.
that was earned.
I mean, fuck it. We're already there. I totally agree because also they're still together. Like,
Yeah,
sure,
so it
that
all
worked out.
works out.
Sure, that worked
Yeah.
out. Okay.
Plot
But I
twist.
did save for us a lot of screenshots. So taking us back before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I do love I do love the like yearbook cameo shots at the beginning where they're explaining where
I
everybody
literally wrote down
is.
the same thing.
I
Just I love
screenshotted
the yep.
all of them. So I'm going to give you a quick summary.
Let's
Amanda
hear them.
Beckett is a cheerleader, homecoming queen, junior prom queen, senior prom queen. Like, because fuck it, why not? And her quote is, I
She's
want to get
attractive,
into these
so
quotes. Like, let's dig into these quotes, right? Her quote is, I'd rather see the world from another angle. Jewel.
Jewel. Mm.
Skylar saw that and was like, Jewel, for real? And I go, it kind of makes sense.
And
Like,
Jewel's playing when she walks into the room at the party. Yeah, they
Jewel
know.
also spoke to a lot of teen girls. Like, let's just be super honest about that. We loved ourselves a Jewel, you know? Kenny Fisher, who's Seth
This is my
Green,
favorite one.
favorite one. Activities, JV basketball. One
One
game.
game.
One game. His future plans are UCLA because, of course, he got into one of the harder schools in the country, but especially in California. Okay. And his quote is, picture me rolling
Tupac.
Tupac. All these guys. Okay. William Lichter, who we said obviously is the nerd of the group. He is in. I am not going to read all of his clubs. You're welcome. I do have
It's
the
a
full
very.
list
Did
of
you
all of his
freeze
clubs.
frame it and get everything?
I
Of course you
scrolled.
did.
Cool. But I won't do it. So I'm just going to give you the first pass, which is he's in Spanish club, he's in Mandarin Chinese, he's in Dead Romance, he's in German club, he's in Large Wooden club. His future plans are, of course, Harvard, also in Boston, MIT, fun throw. And his quote is, all great spirits have always encountered violent oppression from mediocre minds. Albert Einstein. I think that's a great fucking
That
quote.
is such a holier or smarter than thou art quote.
But it's so fucking cool. Like,
Yeah.
I just love it. I'm like, leave it to the nerds to have a good quote. I respect the shit out of it. All right. Mike Dexter. Activities: varsity football, varsity basketball, varsity wrestling, varsity track, homecoming
Which, like,
game.
good for him, honestly. That is pretty damn impressive that he does all
He's
of those varsity.
very athletic.
Yeah.
Like, good job. Very happy for you. We'll learn. Doesn't take him far. All right. Future plans. Ithaca College. Is that like the reject? Is that supposed to be the I know what Ithaca College
my
is, but like
theory is
in the
that-
state, is it like a reject college?
My theory is that Ithaca just has a very funny name because I feel like it gets referenced in a lot of media.
Yeah.
Isn't that where they go in Road Trip? There's a couple other movies where it's like, oh, we go to Ithaca. And I think it's just a fun name. Or
Yes.
maybe they let people film there for free. I don't know.
Yeah, 100%. I don't know. It's a weird one. But his quote is, just win, baby, by Al Davis, owner of the Oakland Raiders. Also, you picked the Raiders.
Well, I
Like,
think when he
really?
said it, that was a little more relevant. In the past maybe 3 or 4 decades, not so much. But
Yeah, yikes. Okay. Denise Fleming. Activities, none. She's above it all. I love that for her.
yes.
Future plans, NYU, which is fun fact where the writer of this film went, NYU Tisch School of the Arts.
Okay.
And quote, a true friend stabs you in the front, Oscar Wilde. I fucking love that quote.
Well, she's got a lot of feelings, it seems like.
She has a lot of feelings, but I love anything Oscar Wilde. So like, I love an Oscar Wilde quote. But yeah, I feel like the writer wrote herself into this movie. Is what I'm saying. You know what I
that
mean?
does sound about right.
Yeah. Preston Myers. Activities: literary journal, honor society, swimming, Sounds very familiar, and I don't love him, so I'm not loving that.
So this
Um,
is you. You should have said this in the cold open. I'm
yikes.
Preston.
I'm Preston. Yikes. Future plans, Dartmouth College. I didn't go to Dartmouth though. Quote, beware of all enterprises that require new clothes, Thoreau. Fun fact, he says his favorite author is Kurt Vonnegut, which, well, you can't see it on my screen right now, but I got some Vonnegut over here because he is also my favorite author.
Okay.
Him and Dorothy Parker, actually. But Kurt Vonnegut references that quote of Thoreau's in one of his books, which I feel like is the only reason that Preston knows this quote. So I think it's a good time. And he like alludes to this later because he's going to a Kurt Vonnegut workshop with Kurt Vonnegut. And I had to cross check this because I was like, no way were there workshops available with Kurt Vonnegut. Technically could have happened because he didn't pass until 2007. And I was like, oh man, if only I had known, I would have gone and workshopped with Kurt Vonnegut.
So this was like master class before it was a thing?
Exactly.
Like, let's go take some writing
well,
classes.
they did. It's funny you say that. They did used to do that a lot. Like my dad took workshops with some drummers that are quite famous, things like that. Like that was a thing back then. You could like pay for a class with these people, except they were in real life. But anyway, those are our graduates, so to speak. Those are their future plans. Yeah. And I think it says a lot about, each of them. Their quotes are the best part. I
think that's one of the more creative things about this film is that the first 10 minutes just sets the stage and you're just right into it. I love how it's so quick, and the yearbook quotes and all that give you, here's some character development without having to have a bunch of conversations first. You get a feel for who they are, and you kind of get 3 minutes with each of them before we actually get to the party. I think there's only 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes of the film before we get to where the majority of the story takes place.
We're just in the fucking party from day one, which is like my nightmare, And I went to these parties back then. I'm not saying that. I just mean now, if I had to go back to this kind of party, I would lose my mind. But I just think like it is very fun to be the observer in this party, though. Yeah. I will say, like, you kind of want to walk through the room and see what everybody's doing and, you know, have like, what are they up to? And you kind of like, I think in this kind of party, it is kind of fun to be the fly on the wall who's listening, kind of alluding back to the Breakfast Club where the janitor's like, I listen to your conversations. I read your notes. Like, I know exactly who you are. I'm like, that sounds like the most fun. Like, let's just listen to what all these fucking weirdos are doing.
The most fun thing is being a janitor. You heard it here first. But I was going to say that, like, my favorite thing about this movie is that it takes, as I said, sort of 4 main storylines, and we come in and out of those, but it feels like a party just because the characters who only have a couple of lines are still in the background the whole time. They're always doing some. I'm sure if you watched this, I haven't done this, but I'm sure if you watched and paid attention to the background, there are things happening, and we'd sort of talked about...
Klepto guy goes around and steals all the things. We got the one girl who has all the like crazy cocktails. Like she's making a bunch of like, she's an aspiring mixologist. You've got the girl who's crying in the background. You've got the guy who's sleeping in the background. You've got the high kids. You've got the pool kids. You've got the
host of the party, underrated. The host of the party. Is so stressed out the whole time.
And that is such a trope. That's in 10 Things I Hate About You Too. It's in a number of things. And that's what is his name? Bogey Lowenstein. Right? Hosts the party in 10 Things I Hate About You. And it's always the rich kid's house. And they always have way too nice a shit to be hosting this party, but they're also the only person who can afford to host this party. So they're stressed the whole time. Yeah. There are all these like
the band that never actually plays.
The band that never plays.
They try to start. Yeah.
You never have a real live band in an actual party like this, which I think is hilarious, but they always do it in movies, you know? Like, yeah, you have these like shticks that you can totally watch out for, and it's half the fun.
It weaves in and out, and I think that was a good time to talk about the fact that we mentioned this was rated PG-13. They actually had to cut some scenes from this in order to keep it from being an R rating, because for some reason you can show kegs and you can show red Solo cups and kids drinking. It's kind of like if you ever go
neon Solo cups. Don't get it twisted. This one did neon.
This is true. But for my fellow Jersey Shore people, who you can go to the beach and you can have a beverage in a Solo cup and nothing can happen to you because there's no way to prove that it's alcohol. But as soon as you pull out a can, so that's why they got away with it in this movie. But apparently the most expensive shots of this film were to keep it rated PG-13. They had to, I never noticed this until I read the IMDb fact and paid attention. I've seen this movie probably 10, 15 times. I didn't notice this until this watch through, is that Billy, my friend Billy, does a shot and he's like, I can't feel my leg. Like that before he says, I can't feel my legs. He does a shot and like licks salt, sucks lime, all this stuff. if you look, he's not holding a shot glass, he's holding a lemon. And that was actually like animated or CGI'd in 1999. I'm not sure what they used. I think it was digitally like put in there.
You know, you can physically edit film, right?
No, you can't do that. You can't no, that doesn't happen. But they put a lemon. So he's sitting there about to take a shot, but he's just holding like a lemon instead of a shot glass. So they did that. And there's also a shot when they first enter the party where someone was holding a beer bong and they photoshopped like a balloon in front of the beer. So somebody's just standing at the party holding a balloon. They had to do that to secure the PG-13 rating.
Which checks out. It checks out. But also like, yeah, who's just holding a balloon? I have questions.
What a
But
party.
at the same time, like, I don't know. Maybe that's like, maybe that happens. Maybe somebody gets distracted and is like, oh, balloon. Listen,
I mean, I guess you
fun.
could be doing like, I remember it. So another fun fact about me, I worked at Chuck E. Cheese when I was in college. And
what? Oh,
right?
this is such a day of learning about Lemar. I'm loving this.
So I remember we thought it would be funny to like suck on the helium from the balloon machine and like do voices.
Who hasn't done that?
Turns out you get lightheaded after a while, which I didn't know until
Mhm.
I was in college. But I guess I could see that being at a party. But I also wanted to mention, as far as stuff that was cut, was these background characters. You see the girl who's kind of staring at the banana, and I think Eagle Eye Folks
She's high as shit.
Yeah, they will recognize her from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. She played Willow's girlfriend. I forget what her name, Tara maybe, but some of her scenes were also cut because they showed her smoking weed, and they were like, "You want the PG-13 rating? Can't have this." But it is funny that there are multiple people in this who are super high, clearly, but we never see them smoke. We don't see hard liquor. We see Billy and Mike have their cheersing with like, I don't know if it's cognac or whiskey, but they don't actually drink it. So there's very specific rules for keeping a PG-13 rating in 1999. But you can say fuck at least once still, which still holds true.
Yeah, and I think like that, I think you can attribute, even talking about Breakfast Club last week, like some of the insults in that to being like, we got to keep this rating low because we got to say butt face.
But
because
Breakfast Club had an R rating.
That's true. I guess it did.
Fuck multiple times, but he calls him a butt face. Like, why didn't he call him a two-faced piece of shit? You know?
And I love he also tells him to watch the language. Anyway, going back, whatever. But yeah, I think it's really interesting the little loopholes that they had to create for that. That's pretty funny. I think like it would be maybe funnier if you had some of those, like especially I think you could show someone smoking, you know what I mean? And it would make a lot more sense because they're definitely getting high, you know, they're definitely high AF. You see that girl just staring at the banana, you know, stuff like that. Yeah. So it's a good time. My question though, while we're here, have you actually been to a party like this? Unrealistic live band not included. Like, did you go to a high school party that was like
not
this,
a high school party? As I said, I was a quiet kid.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But
college,
like, did you go to a
college
party like this?
I went to a house party that was similar, not all the time, but I feel like an end of the year party might look like this in college.
I think I went to one party like this in high school, maybe one, and I was the typical like I was taking care of everybody. You know what I mean? Like I was just walking around.
Yeah.
I was the hydrator. Well, I was definitely drinking, but I have a obnoxiously high tolerance, which I think is inherited from both of my parents. So everyone's drunk around you and you're super not. So you're just very aware of the people who need to be hydrated and need to be put to bed and all these things. And so, yeah, but I don't think this was a common occurrence for sure. So
well, good on you. Every party needs one of those. So thank you for your service.
You know, I'm here to be nurturing and take care of you all as you get fucked up. That's my job.
So I want to backtrack a little bit because you saying that made me think of the quote, my favorite quote. Well, first of all, William's entire scheme that just revolves around drugging someone, assaulting someone, and then blackmailing him with homophobia, essentially.
Which I thought was so problematic. I'm like, and they say the anti-gay F word multiple times that I refuse to say. It's so fucked up that they keep like saying that like it's funny. But that whole scene is quite problematic.
Yeah, it's one of I wrote down we've gone 2 straight weeks with these back to school movies full of hate speech because again, this product of the time.
Can't wait for Booksmart, let me just tell you.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. But my segueing into a less serious topic, during that entire sequence of William's plan, my favorite quotes are when they're like, but there's going to be alcohol at the party. And he goes, I guess I will be drinking. He goes, but you could get drunk. You could get addicted. As two people who are on a podcast that revolves around drinking, I think we've learned from this quote, but I think we're old enough to do okay for ourselves, right?
I think we're fine. We're also like, it doesn't say what things we drink.
That is true. I have a water off to the side here.
Right. I'm hydrating. I have a
hydrating.
giant fucking water because I'm a basic B and I have a Stanley, of course. But yeah, and we're pro mocktail here as well. We're not encouraging you to get addicted. But that is hilarious that, I think that was the perception. Didn't they even say that at when he's bailing him out of jail and Mike Dexter has covered for him later? And he's like, you might want to lay off that alcohol or it'll ruin your life. It's very this like, anti-drugs, anti-drinking ad at the end.
I think that was intentional too, right?
100%.
Of like, you have to put something in here telling kids not to do this, otherwise we can't.
Yeah, because this is a real problem if you have a party night. And meanwhile, he's in jail. I've never been arrested. I'm not promoting this at all, but I was so proud of him. I really was. I was very like, this is a seminal moment in this kid's life. This is the most scandalous thing he's probably ever gonna do.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? He's like drinking. He had a great time. He bonded with this guy that he's nothing like. I love this for him. I love this experience for him.
And it calls back to the whole Breakfast Club thing of, will we still be friends on Monday? And the answer is no, apparently.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
I wanted to ask you, what was of the, I guess there's 4 to 5 main storylines that take place in this. Which one did you find the most interesting to follow as we jump between them all?
I'm so glad you asked me that because I wanted to talk about that. I like Denise and Kenny. I just think they're the most real and also weirdly funny. I say weirdly because I don't think it's intentionally funny. What I think is funny about it is that she has all this pent up fucking trauma with this guy that's rooted in these very like elementary or middle school antics and things of like, you took my Cabbage Patch doll and you beheaded her, and like just these funny like deep seated things that still have an impact on her. And if you think about like, she's in high school, she's graduating high school, going to college, she's going to be a grown woman. She is a grown woman, arguably, and she's still deeply upset about the Cabbage Patch doll. And I just thought that scene is so funny. He turns into a much more likable version of himself because he's not doing this put upon like, I'm a white guy trying to be a black guy, which is another very problematic aspect of this movie.
But also indicative of the time. I wrote
very
that down.
indicative of the time.
1999, that existed.
100%. But it's a caricature. And that's the thing that's so problematic about it. It's like not just the cultural appropriation of it all, it's the caricature of it all.
Right.
And he is doing that for sure. And I love that she gets him out of it. Like, she's like, can you fucking like, can we quit with this bullshit? Can we just be ourselves?
And then he calls her out a little bit too.
I love that. Exactly. I'm glad you said that.
You're also doing the same thing.
Exactly. The next thing I was going to say was like, she has shit to be called on too. Yeah. And he's making fun of her look, and not in I think they're making fun of each other's looks, not because, oh, you look stupid and I'm trying to make you feel bad or whatever. It's, you look inauthentic. That's what I like about it. It's not an insult to be an insult. It's not, oh, I'm making fun of your looks and that's so shallow and petty. It's a, really with this vibe, that's not your energy. Come on.
It's kind of like the opposite of Breakfast Club, where they feel like they're being forced into these roles of, I have to be this because my parents want me to be this. In this film, it's more like, I have to be this because I need to have an identity that everyone sees me and I fit into this mold. So it's, and then they call each other out on it and obviously evolve past it in the long run, we assume, after the credits. But I think that's pretty cool. Flip on its head.
And I actually think it's indicative of, if you were trapped in a bathroom, just like logistically, you do have to get creative with like not losing your mind, not being bored. And they're doing silly shit. I just love the cut to that shot. That's the cut to them with her. She has the eye mask on. He has the loofah. They're just sitting against the tub talking shit. And I just was like,
New Kids on the Block. Yeah.
I'm just like, you would do that. Like, you have to entertain yourself in this. It just felt like the most real thing in the whole story. You know?
I think then it's removed from the party component, which I think also, for sure.
I can attest, like, I have to do this at parties. You know this from experience. I have to go give myself a breather. Like, I have to go read a book for 20 minutes, and come back and recharge. And like, so those are my people, you know what I mean? Like, I can identify with them. But What is yours the same, or do you have a different one?
I like that one. I think my favorite is, I wanted to point out first before I get to this, is that for being the protagonist and antagonist, Preston and Mike never interact on screen. We see Mike as kind of the bad guy going after Amanda. We see Preston as quote unquote the good guy going after Amanda. They never actually interact. They don't even actually share screen time at all throughout the film, which is interesting.
That's a
But
good call out, because you
yeah,
would assume that the
that at some
trope would
point they would
be
confront.
they would confront, they would have a throwdown, of some
Yeah.
kind. And no,
But
that's
no, he never
interesting.
stands up to Mike
I
in any
actually
way.
like
It's
that, like let's leave that shit alone.
Yeah,
That's
it's Amanda making her own decisions of I'm walking away from this guy because he's bad for me, and now here's this other guy who I kind of like. I don't think it's executed perfectly, but I like it more than I'm gonna Marty McFly you or George McFly you
yes.
to get you
We
to
have to have a
you know
fight to win yeah,
right.
totally.
But to spin off of that, my favorite through line, I think, is the William and Mike storyline, just because it's
I
this
know,
kid who's
that's
been
cute.
constantly bullied through all of high school trying to get back. And by the end, he does have this moment of we're not so different. And it's very like touching in a way. And obviously,
It
they're
is.
both drunk and it's not a real moment. But that
But
I
it kind of
said,
is. It kind of is.
he apologizes when he says like, oh, what was that speech you had to give, and I like
I know.
interrupted, and he's like, oh, that was this morning at
This
graduation. That
morning at
line
graduation where I'm the fucking
always gets me.
valedictorian and you humiliated me. Thanks. Yeah.
But Janelle pointed out, and I said, of just, dude, I would watch like 15 more minutes extended cut of these two hanging
Of
out
these
drunk
two
because
hanging
it's
out.
so short lived. But that's my favorite part of the movie, honestly, when they're palling around.
Well, and a slight segue from that, I do love that they pal around. I love that moment for them, because I do think it's a little bit real, because their inhibitions are lowered, and they're being like, they're
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily just sticking to personas. They're letting some things crack. Mike especially, like he's letting
Yeah.
this shield crack of whatever. So I do like that. I agree, and I like that he covers for him. Obviously, he kind of takes that bullet, which is good. But I adjacent to that is the story of his like nerdy friends waiting to pull this prank on the roof. And I love
Yeah.
that they had the whole fight about like what nerdy characters were they even going to
I don't want to be
in this
Grand Moff
plot.
Tarkin.
I
Yeah.
don't like, I love that they have this argument at the beginning, but then they're just so loyal and sweet. They
Right.
sit on that fucking roof and they just hang all night. He's getting trashed. He's having the time of his life. He's being the coolest he's ever been, which good on him. Very happy for him. But he has basically completely forgotten about this plan. And they just still sit there. Like, that is loyalty. That is friendship. They're like, and they're entertaining themselves by doing nerd things. And
Yeah,
then they pull this shit. They finally do pull the prank, and it's on them, and they panic and whatever. I just think that's such a funny, cute like sequence of events as well.
and that just goes back to what I said of I love that there's only probably 3 scenes of them on the roof out separate from the party, but I do think the script and the editing process, we cut to the right things at the right time. Like,
Yes.
I know that some of the humor hasn't aged perfectly. I know depending on when you watch this, you might not relate to some of it, but I don't think you can critique sort of how this is 6 different comedy sketches being interspersed at the right perfect times to be like, okay, we're going back to the roof now. They're fighting with lightsabers. How's this going? Like,
and they're fake lightsabers, and he's like, he cut off his hand. He doesn't shove him, but he
Luke
should. He
doesn't
just
shove
cut off his
Vader.
hand. Like, I just love it. It's so funny.
It's dark up here. Yeah.
What I've learned is I want to hang out with the nerds, really.
Facts.
But
Now,
it's a good time.
one thing I did have sort of a problem with even on rewatch, as much as I enjoy this film, the one part that I sort of don't enjoy is when after Amanda kind of shuts down Preston because he's approaching her at the worst possible opportunity. He goes off on his own. He drops the letter. There's this sort of
this like
Deus
magical
Ex
sequence
Machina
of the
journey.
fucking letter getting to her.
I guess when you think about it, of like, what of all the ways, they're like, okay, there's this letter on the ground. We have to make sure it gets to Amanda. What's the best way we could do that? We couldn't have just had somebody pick it up and be like, oh shit, this is a letter for Amanda. We had to have this weird.
But it ends up in a chip bowl right in front of her. Like,
and
I'm
somebody's
sorry.
gonna eat those chips.
Somebody's gonna eat those chips and toss that fucking letter. That's such a silly sequence, but I think it was either inspired by a common thing in these types of movies. There's always some weird little circumstance like that happens if you think about it. And it's an interesting sequence to follow. But yes, it
Kind of like
feels
a Deus Keg Machina, we'll call it.
yeah.
Of just, here's this solution to help us. Because then they don't even interact until the next day. And I think that's my biggest problem with the movie. She finds the letter, she pieces out, and then we get our resolution, what, like 20 minutes later in the movie of how
Yeah.
that plays out.
Also, the letter is weirdly clean. I have a real problem with that.
I feel bad for the people that are eating out of that chip bowl.
For real, that letter has been everywhere. It had gum stuck to it, and and it does, like, while it's moving through, it feels like it gets dirtier. But when she picks it up, it's clean AF. Like, it's a new letter, Amanda. Oh my God, somebody left this for me. I'm so, special, whatever.
Yeah.
But one of the things, I agree with you, that whole thing bugs me. But the thing about their interaction that bugs me is she doesn't even fucking know who he is.
Right. Like, she's never known throughout all these 4 years that he's harped on this memory. She has no idea.
She has no idea. There were definitely people that I was not friends with. That's fine. Like, that's normal. We weren't tight, whatever. But I knew who they were, and I was in an 800-person class. Like, not every single person. I'm not saying I knew every single person, but this is definitely implied that this is a smaller school, smaller class, whatever. She also literally sat right next to him in a class. I know if I sat next to you in class, I remember you. You know what I mean? Like, she has no awareness of him, and I think it's a real mark against her as a character that makes her likable at all, because you're like, why would you like this person who is so self-absorbed that she doesn't even know you exist?
And I don't even know if it's self-absorbed, but I said to Janelle, I was just like, her character, I mean, it's a lack of character, really. It just feels like she's waiting for a man to tell her what to do. Like, she falls in love with the first guy she meets at school. He dates her for 4 years. She kicks him. And then you, Mackenzie, a guy who you had gone to school with for 4 years, but you didn't even know his name and face. If he writes you a love letter, are you going to go make out with him the next morning?
Absolutely not. And that's the thing that's unrealistic about it. I don't know this guy. And you're right. She feels very one-dimensional. She feels like, I am just this prom queen. I have no other personality to me.
Right.
Who am I if I do not have a man? Blah, blah, blah. Like, she was very taken with Mike when she got to the school, obviously, and all these things. And I was popular. And she just leaned into the popularity and didn't really, like, become a person.
Even her clubs that she's in, her only listing is, like, she's partnered with Mike on, like, the queen thing, right? She's in no clubs.
No,
that's her only personality. Is I'm very
homecoming
pretty
queen. I'm June prom queen.
I'm pretty and
queen.
popular.
Yeah. I'm pretty and popular, and it's just fucking not interesting,
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's more to her that is interesting, but her hair is like 3 times the size of her body. Her boobs are like prominently featured for a reason. Like, she is being turned into a physical manifestation of a prom queen. And
I think prom is short for prominent, right? So prominent.
Promenade.
Okay, fair.
Close
I learned
enough,
something today. Now, Janelle had actually pointed, and upon this 20th whatever rewatch, Janelle pointed out just how breathy Jennifer Love Hewitt is throughout this whole thing. It reminded me of I Know What You Did Last Summer, which she's also in, but also, strangely, Freddie Prinze Jr. is equally breathy, and I Know What You Did Last Summer.
He's more breathy. That fucker cannot have an emotional monologue without breathing through it.
She's rivaling him in this, and I'm like, did she take some lessons away from that? Because I just want a super cut of her going, Mike,
gasp.
Just that whole supercut of this film would probably be about 5 minutes long, because I think she does more of that than she does actual dialogue. And I think that's my main, upon rewatch at 40, criticism of this movie, is she just doesn't feel like a rounded out character.
She's not rounded out. She's very one-dimensional. She's not that interesting. She's a physical manifestation of, like, that trope. You know what I mean? And they didn't try to dig deep into her at all. They also didn't with Preston either. So, like, how can they be the anchors of the movie? Preston doesn't have anything else going for him either. All those things listed on him as a club, like, cool, he seems well-rounded, but all you see about him is his obsession with Amanda, with whom he has never spoken.
They get away a lot with just the fact that Ethan Embry is likable, I think, because he doesn't do anything.
He doesn't
valiant.
do anything, and he's not even around that much. I feel like you get more bought into everyone's story but theirs, and I think that's the problem with them being kind of the anchors of this movie. And if you think about it, and same with me, if you think about oh, I watched this 10 years ago, 15 years ago, the first thing that pops into your head is them two, or at least Jennifer Love Hewitt. That's what you remember from it. But it's by far the least interesting part of this movie.
Yeah. Speaking of Preston and uninteresting, I think the last thing I had in my notes was just I'm never really sure how I feel about the part when he leaves the party and goes and meets up with Jenna Elfman from Dharma and Greg, dressed as an angel. And that I
Yeah.
do think that scene is funny, especially when he's calling the radio station and she thinks it's because he has a crush on Barry Manilow. I think that's a pretty good joke, but
Yeah.
I don't love that separating. That's the one part of the movie where we sort of leave the party for a good 10 minutes or so and get this whole thing playing out. I don't really
I
love
would
that
love an
sequence.
explanation for why that was the thing. You know what I mean? Like a behind the scenes of like, why did we bring her in? Why was it at this place? Why was it an angel? Why was it like, is it supposed to be a sign from God, so to speak? She's an angel stripper, which you do, you girlfriend, have a great time. But like, she is a weird far left turn from everything we have been talking about.
Yeah.
And also, she's kind of annoying at first. She hangs up his phone call, you know, like there's just that interaction is very out of place, and it feels like a vehicle for which through which we see him again, just to see him again, not because
Yeah.
it's productive at all. It's, hey, he's our lead, he needs screen time.
He comes back to the party because of that, just to get shut down. And I guess it was a way to fill 10 minutes of
Yeah,
time.
it's because she's supposed to, somebody has to inspire him. The only explanation I can give is somebody has to inspire him to take his fate that he keeps talking about this whole
Right.
movie into his own hands.
Yeah.
And you know, you have to take the baton. There's a point at which you need to like take the bull by the horn, so to speak, all these things. And so then he goes back and professes his love, and it's very poorly timed. And there's even an allusion to that at the end too, where she finds him at the train station and he's leaving for this workshop and this whole thing, and she's just like, it's just really bad timing. And he's like, yeah, they have really bad timing. They have no reason at all that I can find that they would come together, other than he wrote her a sweet note and they've said 10 words to each other, you know.
Yeah.
And that's to me is the biggest, most weakest link of this movie, and I think why I still to this day don't like super love it. But I think that there are some nuggets of like funny and antics and comedy for sure.
I think that's a fair critique. When I look at 90s teen comedies, as few and far between as they were, and I think of things like Clueless and Empire
Mm-hmm.
Records, it's never the love story that I zero in on. In Clueless, it's not her and Paul Rudd that's really the crux of why I enjoy that film. In
No.
Empire Records, it's not the main characters falling in love of why I enjoy that film. It's more the vibes and seeing, to
Yeah.
Breakfast Club's point, the different, not stereotypes, I don't want to use that term, but just these different types of people that I see
Yeah.
myself in, or I see my
You
classmates
can
in.
relate to.
Yeah, and I relate to them, of seeing them interact and these comedic moments happening. So I don't view this as, I don't like this because it's a love story. I like it because it's a comedy, and it's a really fun watch for me personally.
I think it's notable to say like that the ones that I like the most are the ones that I think have better story structure
Fair.
and are based on something a little bit more archetypal but well done, whether it be rom-com or like a coming of age story. Like if you think about the ones that I love the most, like She's All That we just watched together, I love that
Mhm.
movie. I think it's a great movie. It's based on Pygmalion. It's, 10 Things I Hate About You is another one of this era that I think is awesome, is great. Taming of the Shrew, right? Clueless, awesome.
But this one was based on Macbeth. No, it
um
wasn't. It was not. That was a
Hard.
lie. I just wanted to sound smarter than I am.
Yeah, that was it. I mean, A for effort, I'll give you that. An
Can't
A for
hardly
effort.
wait to be king. The Macbeth
Can't,
story.
there it is. There's the connection. Yeah. No, and then also I think the other one too is Clueless that you mentioned. That's Emma, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
these are things that have a better core story structure than this one does. I think
Yeah.
that's maybe my biggest problem, because I do think that these teen movies are fun, and I think they got better. I do think they got better. I think people realized, okay, this is lacking a little bit of something to the story. Let's like get a better structure and improve on it. I do think that this opened the door for that to happen, though.
Yeah, that's a fair take. Of this sort of kickstarted the genre back up, and then people went on to improve upon it from there. The last thing I want to touch on before we wrap up is just, what did you think of sort of the ending and the where are they now sort of wrap up of the day after the party?
I mean, some of it checks out. So also, same thing, screenshot that for you. Do you want a summary of where everybody ended up?
Well, I wrote down Mike was fired from the car wash after incriminating Polaroids, so it's good to know that people were still homophobic in the aughts and not just the 90s. Comforting, I
Yeah.
guess.
He lost his football scholarship as well because he partied too hard. So that also checks out. Also, William went to Harvard and he kicked ass. He became one of the most popular students, which checks out. Again, he had his entry to that into at the party. He's like, I can be smart and personable. Let's go. He formed a software company that's now valued at $40 million. Back then, that's a big deal.
Wow.
What?
Today, inflation, that's a
It's like a
$11
solid
billion
couple billion.
company.
Yeah, for sure. And he's currently dating a supermodel. Good on you. And then I love Kenny and Denise got together and then dumped each other. Then they found a bathroom and got back together. So
I do enjoy that that is all we get from them is
yeah,
they banged again
they
20 minutes
banged again.
later. That's
He's
all
like,
we
well, let's
know.
double check this. We know what their
Yeah.
relationship is based on, is what it is.
Yeah.
And then of course we have our, main couple that he delays the train. He does eventually go to his workshop, which I was most concerned with. I was like, you do not walk out on Kurt fucking Vonnegut. Okay. So he does go. She wrote him a letter every day that he was away. And they're
Until
still
the internet
together to this day.
Actually, the
And
internet was already around. Maybe she was writing emails to him.
I don't know, AIM, perhaps? Who knows?
That counts as a letter, I
The
guess.
away message with the
You up?
lyrics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The away message with the lyrics. Yeah.
No, I don't love their ending. The others kind of check out.
Yeah.
But same thing. Core couple, not the vibe. Not my vibe.
And you get the alien, the X-Files kids getting abducted. So that's a fun little special effect in the middle of the credits.
Yeah, I think it's a good time.
And apparently they had rumored, I don't know how official they were, but in 2015 or so, not only Jennifer Love Hewitt, but the guy who plays Mike and a couple others had mentioned, oh, we're thinking of doing a reunion, like a 20-year anniversary of this film where they would be going back to their high school reunion. And I was like, that sounds like a cool concept. I guess nothing ever came from it, but I'm like, that could be a really fun concept to do a 20 years later sequel. It's a little late now, but
it is a little late now, but also like, I don't know. I kind of like the stuff, the way that it ended. We kind of know, like, what are we going to get from Mike, really? I guess I'm more interested in what's happening with Billy. He was a good egg, I'm more interested in Denise and Kenny. Maybe that could be fun, but yeah, maybe not my vibe. So, okay, all that to say, we went on a whole crazy roundabout of this show, which I think like checks out, by the way, because that's the vibe of the whole movie.
It's chaos. It's chaos.
It's chaos. It's absolutely chaos. So what was your rating? Like on rewatch, what was your rating?
I mean, you guys know I'm pretty transparent. So last week when I graded The Breakfast Club, it was because I waited way too late to see it. And with this one, it's the opposite. I saw this right at the right time. So I think when it holds up, there is a little bit of nostalgia there. But I did feel like I laughed out loud rewatching this more than I did watching The Breakfast Club for the first time. I will say I think it's a more enjoyable movie, even if it's not as good of a film, if that makes sense. So if I'm going with my gut on this one, I'm going to give it like an 8. It's not perfect, but I really, really like watching this film. I would rewatch it again in 6 months. I think I could have a good time watching it.
Wow. Okay. Somebody out there on the pod, because I need to do this, but if you're already doing this, somebody track Lemar's ratings. I need somebody to compare this rating to other like awesome movies that we've done.
It's better than Schindler's List. I had more fun watching this movie than I did watching Schindler's List.
Well,
so
of
this
course
is
you're
an
gonna
8.
have more fun. It doesn't make it better. Okay, whatever. We're gonna fight about this later. That's wild to me, that rating. But the nostalgia is a important factor in any watch. So I completely get that part of it. But yeah, I'm gonna come in low on this one. I'm gonna give it like a 5.5.
But it's watchable. It's over the 5 line.
It is watchable. It is watchable. I don't think that I will ever watch it again. I don't think I will ever watch it again in my life, but it's watchable if you haven't seen it, or if you haven't seen it in 20 years, like sure, give it a rewatch. But yeah, I wouldn't spend much more time with it personally.
I'm about to kick everyone's ass in this room. Mike Dexter.
Accurate. All right, fam. Thanks for joining. That was an interesting time, to say the least. Come back next week for more school shenanigans. This one's, I think, a more modern classic, one that everybody, I think, can quote pretty heavily. Mean Girls. It's going
Which
to
I think
be,
only came out, what, like 3 years after Can't Hardly Wait. It was in short order. I want to say '03, maybe?
is it
Maybe a
03? I
4 year
thought it was
difference?
later, but
Could be.
maybe. We'll let you know next time because I don't remember off the top of my head. But I do remember far more lines from Mean Girls than I do from Can't Hardly Wait. That's for sure. But between now and then,
Be sure to follow us on our socials at We Drink and We Watch Things, Instagram and TikTok. Also, get ready to start emailing us. We Drink and We
yes.
Watch Things pod at gmail.com because we have our 1 year anniversary in a few weeks.
Yay!
And we're running a contest to give away one of our We Drink and We Watch Things koozies valued at $200 consistently, have not
We'll never
depreciated
come
or
down.
appreciated in value. But what we want from you guys, and we encourage you to get as creative as you want because we've never done this before. So send us an email, send us a DM, send us a voice memo, a record, anything you want. Because what we're going to do is sort of review them. You can talk about what was your favorite movie that we covered this year. What was your favorite episode and why? What was your favorite conversation? We are not putting a lot of bumpers on this thing or boundaries. We want you to do what you want, and we're just going to read maybe our top 3 to 5 during that episode, vote on our favorite, and that person will get a koozie. We won't even charge you for the FedEx. So
Will we? Wow, I didn't volunteer
we
for
might
that.
charge you for the FedEx. It's worth $200, so you're going to need insurance.
Yeah, got to insure that package. It's very valuable. Get creative with this, please, guys. I would really love to hear, like, what did you love? What did you hate? What was the movie that you loved that we hated, or vice versa? You
I
know,
want to
like
hear some haikus and some
perhaps a
poems,
haiku.
some
That could be
raps.
so fun. Your
Yeah.
girl loves a poem. Your girl loves a book, if you can't tell. So, yeah, please get creative. We really want to hear from you. Voice memos, DM us, email us, whatever's easy. We're super looking forward to it.
Hell
so,
yeah.
All right. Well, for now, go have a drink and watch a thing. Cheers.
Cheers.